In our codebase, entities are not directly returned from controller actions. Instead, there's a separate set of model classes, DTOs. This separation is essential. We already learned that REST stops at level of the outer-facing contract. What lies underneath that is of no importance to REST. From that, we already know that the entity model, in our case used by Entity Framework Core, as a means to represent database rows as object, should be different from the outer-facing model. Those model classes, the DTO model, represent what's sent over the wire. Sometimes you will see these models referred to as your DTOs or even view models, although that terminology is more suited for ASP.NET Core MVC web client applications. The fact that we separate this leads to possibilities. Take an author, for example. On screen you see some pseudocode for that. An author is stored in our database with a date of birth. But that date of birth, well, that might not be what we want to offer up to the consumers of the API. They might be better off with age. Another example might be concatenation. Concatenating first name and last name from an entity into one name field in the resource representation. In fact, that's exactly what's going on in our codebase. And sometimes data might come from different places. An author could have a field, say, royalties, that comes from another API our API must interact with. That alone would lead to issues when using entity classes for the outer-facing contract, as they don't contain that field. Keeping these models separate leads to more robust, reliable, and evolvable code. Imagine having to change a database table. That would lead to a change of the entity class. If we are using that same entity class to directly expose data via the API, our clients might run into problems because they are not expecting an additional renamed or removed field. We're essentially making versioning very hard because by reusing those entity classes, the database cannot evolve separately from the API, and that is not okay. Later on in the course, when we will learn about HateOS with advanced content negotiation and vendor-specific media types, we will even find out that without separating these model layers, those things wouldn't even be feasible if you want to keep working in a statically typed world. So, when developing, it is very important to keep these models separate. In some more advanced architectures, you might even have more model layers in between. One more thing to cover in this module: HTTP head.